foreclosure crisis is sort of the first and most obvious symbol of sort of the economic downturn that we're seeing and the terrible practices that have led us to, this debt-ridden culture that we've created, that we've allowed our financial institutions to create. Places like Cleveland and Detroit and the Gulf Coast, where unemployment is so high, you can't make an affordable loan to somebody who has no income. Cleveland will not look like what Cleveland looked like 10 years ago. It already doesn't look like what it does years ago. So how are we going to redo our urban communities? And what are going to happen to the people who lived in those neighborhoods? It's the battle that we fought in Chicago when public housing projects came down. What are we going to do with that housing stock that no one can afford anymore? So there are big issues out there that are not going to be solved by attorneys litigating, but by attorneys being part of a neighborhood effort to rebuild communities. Well, I think the thing that disturbs me most about this whole mess, and I mean, you've seen it coming over the last 20, 25 years, the deregulation frenzy, the rush to give people mortgages they can't afford, is it has really been the greatest transfer of wealth that this country has seen from the poor to the wealthy over the last 20 years that is unimaginable. And that has had its biggest impact on minorities and on low-income communities. The income that people might have had at one point no longer exists. And so if you were a recent immigrant and you didn't speak the language, or you lived in a poor community, it was more likely that you were going to get a loan that was going to put you behind the 8 ball than anywhere else. And those are the communities of color, the low-income communities, the rural communities where people, in the Appalachian places, those are the places that have been most devastated by this crisis. Fundamentally, we have a big tenant crisis as well, right? You have a lot of houses where a lot of people live in 4-family houses. When those homes get foreclosed, tenants have very limited rights. Tenants may get wrongfully evicted, or they may be living in a property that is falling apart, or living in a neighborhood surrounded by foreclosed homes. But the fact is, the affordable housing stock in this country is minimal. We simply don't have remotely enough housing for low and moderate income families.